where I go, U of M to grad school. Yeah. I didn't write in LSU, which is where I got my undergrad. People
Tigers.
Oh, geez.
But yeah,
I'm really nice. I am the Rtd Director from District O, which is Western County, still part of Longmont, but not the finance area over here. Serves first vice chair with our chair here, and I came to transit after many years supporting various types of alternative transportation. I taught land use planning, local government, and law school, and then I bicycle associations for 30 years. And you know, my transit story was one I told board event, which is I was in Japan on a bullet train, and it stopped. We were getting off in Osaka, and I didn't realize, my friend and I didn't realize that we had to be ready to get off that train. So we're pulling down our stuff and getting ready to go, and the train took off, and we spent a couple days in some other town.
Howdy, everybody. My name is Devin. It's my first CAC meeting. Happy to be here and excited about it. I work for Denver City Council, focus on community engagement through leadership with Councilman Amanda Sandoval and Councilman Jimmy Torres. Focused in the community engagement, community outreach, registered neighborhood organizations, just helping with the residents as a whole. Also from the Chicago area, actually, and CTA is just about a nightmare in any way, shape, or form. So just in general, glad to be here and glad to get some information.
Well, I'm Travis too. My career started in transit about 15 years ago. I used to work for Kickoff Transit Services that operates a lot of commuter rail in the country. I primarily help launch operations in the Texas area, both like Dallas, Fort Worth, and then Austin, Texas as well. Been back in Colorado for about 7 years. I currently own my own company, but we're sort of a contractor for Amazon. At FedEx, we manage a lot of their like last mile delivery routes in the northern Denver metro area. But I would say my passion as far as transit agencies, I won't choose one I work for, but Portland, Oregon is one of my favorites just because it's so seamless to use, and especially when you think of like fares, one of the things we're talking about here is really exciting. But Portland's at a while, like you can never pay wrong fare. Yeah, there's my card. Like everything is so simple, just tap on, tap off, and make sure everything else goes pretty seamless here. Yeah, really I love how simple they built their system out. Everything else is pretty well.
I'm Jim Palmino, Denver native and long time CDOT employee. I know some of these people from my CDOT career, and my introduction partly to transit was through CDOT, working on the T-Rex project with Southeast Rail was constructed, as well as the last 5 or 6 years of my CDOT career. I was the Rtd CDOT fast tracks days, so I was the sort of the way the sausage was made on all the rail systems. Now as riders, you know, have different perspective and appreciation. I guess my interesting story was in Italy over transit, where women's soccer team is kind of warming up the drive to Naples. We got to kick the ball around a bunch of soccer players.
And I'm John Fusa, fairly new on the CAC, probably rounding the corner on a second year. As well from District G, from Joanne UK's district, Town of Parker. I live in Parker, work for the Town of Parker. I'm here as a citizen, not a representative of the town. I'm a planner by profession training. I'm a community development director. Interested in transit, of course. I spend a lot of my work and my professional career on the land use side. The land use transportation connection is critically important. And when done right, locally and regionally, they reinforce and complement one another. I've been in the Denver metro since 2013, coming here from New Jersey. Spent most of my life in the New York City metro region, a little bit of time in Chicago. As well, I think my earliest memory of transit was when I was really young, with my father, trespassing on the Northeast Corridor when it was run by Penn Central, and putting blasting caps on the rails. And then for some low budget entertainment way back when, as well, more recent, not recent anymore. In the early 90s, when I was living in Northern New Jersey, went to grad school in Manhattan, take the trains in, and I was also working full time. So after class was over, I take the train back to where I worked, commuter train, and I would inevitably fall asleep, miss my stop, and end up at the end of the line. I had to take a taxi back to the car in my station. So happy to be here. Happy to be Rtd Transit in our little corner of the district.
And John is a co-chair of this committee. We had a kind of election of sorts last time, which is to say John raised his hand and nobody else did. So thank you very much, John. Thanks.
I'm Heather Britton, and I live in Brookfield. I always forget which district that is. I've lived there for 23 years. I commuted to downtown for 22 years, on transit, all 22 years. Grew up in Colorado. My only transit story is the first time I ever rode an Rtd bus was in 1984. So I've been riding transit for a long time. On a field trip. I hope that year was right. I work for the city and county of Denver also, and I'm the director of benefits and wellness. My real interest really is that this is a benefit we offer our employees. We actually offer our Eco Pass now to employees for free. So the city fully subsidizes it for our employees. So it's just really more of an interest for me.
Mandy Morton, not IT support. I've got, I think maybe something going here. It seems
Just don't move.
Yeah, I'm just not going to move. So I am a planner by training and will be helping to facilitate the CAC moving forward. I gestured. That was. Anyway, we'll figure this out coming up. So the good thing for those of you on the video is you can see, we can't see anything here, that the screen keeps cutting out. So the presentation should be really interesting for those in the room.
I'm Loretta Longer here with P Consulting, trying to support, but I'm not an IT person either. My Rtd experience is rather limited because I don't travel downtown very often, but I did take the light rail from Parker here today, and so that was my adventure, and it was a very smooth ride. So I'll intend to do it every meeting.
Julian Bouquet, Rtd Director for District G, which is Parker, Lone Tree, some bits and pieces of Douglas and Arapahoe County. I also took the E-line to get up here, so we moved right on the same train coming back. Most important thing is being a director. I am a writer of public transit. I took it almost 6 days a week on my peak of my college career when I was going to the University of Denver. Grew up in Douglas County. And now I'm actually a school teacher down in Douglas County. My most interesting transit story was my girlfriend at the time. Our first international trip we ever took was in Hong Kong back in 2017. We were riding on, I believe it's called the Octopus system, or the Octopus card they use. And little did she know, she just kept seeing me jumping on the train, so excited. And she's like, "Why are you so excited?" And I said, "Oh, I'm just excited I just love this train. It's so efficient and everything." And little did she know, I actually proposed to her, and she's now my wife. And I proposed to her right after our train ride, after watching the fireworks for New Year's Eve in Hong Kong. That's probably my favorite riding experience. Not to say I've had a lot of fun riding experiences on RTD.
So who are the trains are so romantic?
I know. They create relationships.
I'm Brandon Figliolino, he and his. I am the Senior Specialist of Community Engagement at RTD, and I'm the staff liaison to this committee. I do not have an engagement story on the train or the bus, but I would take the Flatiron Flyer when I worked in Boulder, and I loved it because I would ride up with my bike and then I would ride home to Arvada on my bike, and now I take the train to the office, so it's great.
So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Deborah Johnson. I serve as the general manager and CEO. And just because we took some time with our technical difficulties, I'm gonna go ahead and do the introduction because I do have another engagement and I think it's important that I'm engaged with all of you. So I pride myself on being a person in the people business because that's what it's all about. Our core business is moving people. And listening to all of your stories, I find them to be quite fascinating in reference to your experience on transit. I also believe that public transportation is the great societal equalizer because what it is intended to do is provide access to opportunity. And while we may not all be born on the same footing, basically in order to be able to advance, whether it's getting a job, going to school, or getting to a doctor's appointment while we're trying to advance our overarching health, you need to have a way in which to get there. And I'm a firm believer, as long as there's people on this planet, there'll be a need for healthcare, education, sanitation, and quite naturally transportation, and whatever that mode may be. I have been in this space more than 30 years, working at a multitude of different transit agencies, and I do it because I believe in servant leadership. I really believe it's important, and I possess that as part of my inner being and my qualities that I possess and the way I was reared. I grew up taking public transportation. And so when I stand before you and I speak about these things, it's inherent in who I am and helps define me. And I utilize transit each and every day in some form or facet. I was spending time this morning at Denver Union Station, engaging with some of the men and women that make this system go each and every day. And so when we talk about transit experiences, recognizing I have worked at several different ones across the country, I don't have one in particular, and this will sound kind of weird, but I was just reflecting, and what I'll say is one of my fond memories goes back to the original RTD, which is the Southern California Regional Transportation District, that now is Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transportation Authority, serves as the transportation planning entity and the operator. But my favorite cousin and I used to take the bus and we would go down to the beach and hang out, and then people would be in the back of the bus and we would have little parties and we'd go to the beach and have a good time. And so I have fond memories of being in Chicago and, you know, standing in front of right behind the limit line. And one of my girlfriends starts singing talk to the bus driver when the bus is in motion because you got to stand behind the white line. And I was like mortified. So I've had some good times to help shape the body. And I enjoyed the Metropolitana when I was writing in Rome. And I would just say, as we look at what we're doing collectively, when we talk about transit agencies and heard, you know, CTA, you said it's a mess. I would say, basically, it's a public entity. And as we look at that, it's incumbent upon us to capitalize on the experience. So I would ask each one of you in taking on this volunteer opportunity to let us know. I'm interested in knowing the opinions, perception, and attitudes that you have, because it's incumbent upon us to be empathetic to our customers' pain points so we actually can enhance the experience. And so it's a daunting challenge. I recognize that because what we do is public transit service delivery. And the operative word there is public, because we don't have the opportunity to pick and choose who constitutes the public. And I like to focus and say we have customers. And if we start thinking in those terms, that we're providing value as opposed to a rider, because that's something different. So we need to have our mind shift, because basically with customer aspects, you're providing value. So I want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time to be committed to this endeavor. I think it will bode well for us. I know you'll be collaborating with our board of directors, but I too would like to know what it is as we leverage going forward to garner your ridership experience, to use you as an ambassador for the betterment of this transit system that has ample opportunity. So with that, I hope you'll reach out, and I thank you for the opportunity to reach you today. I can stay for a couple of minutes and I want to hear introductions.
Okay, well, I'll be quick. I have to go after Deborah. Jennifer Webster with Town Public Affairs, part of the consulting team that will facilitate these meetings on a monthly basis, have tried to reach out and have connected with many of you in the room, but not all of you, so we'll still be doing that. My experience with transit, it goes way back. I, like John, I grew up in northern New Jersey, and my father commuted every day to New York City. And as a rabble-rouser teenager, we would go into the city too. And then right after college, lived in Washington, D.C. And I will tell you that my transit story may or may not have involved being overserved one night falling asleep on, just like John, I think it must be a New Jersey thing. I think I forgot where it's supposed to be in Washington, D.C. But, my family and I, we love to travel internationally, and, there's no better way to access places but for transit, and especially in Europe. So I know when we first moved to Colorado 25 years ago, I was sort of astounded that at that point in time there wasn't a super robust system. So we were super excited about this opportunity to support our team. We believe in the mission, and we're thrilled to be here and looking forward to working with all of you.
Hi everyone, my name is Stephen. Today, I grew up outside the Chicago area, Cleveland, with them, Gary, Indiana. I moved here about 3 years ago to Denver. I had 5 months Denver here. Regions, as I'm actually right on the border of that little Dubs C3 districts. I've been living out throughout Denver for the last all about, so I moved in Sun Valley and lived over in the Hampton district. I've been taking lines like the 83, the H, the 105, the 16, just everywhere past 3 years living here. And my transit experience, what really got the transit is that when I was doing my master's degree in social and organizational psychology, we focused a lot on group psychology, group thinking, and how that relates to the setting and what validates people in these settings. I really just in my love for when I was doing this in United Kingdom, it's more specifically London. So being able to just live in a system that just being taking the tube everywhere and doing everything was liberating and was fun. The best part about it is that like being someone who's like the here, it was just nice to tap the card and you can go anywhere, find anything. You can new forms of the city you never find. And that was like the most liberating experience I had. And when I knew I came back to Denver to start life here, I said, okay, how to make that happen here. So I'm here. Pleasure meeting you all.
Thank you all. I'm Cinnamon Watson, also with Travelers Public Affairs. It's a pleasure to be here, and just really want to thank you for your time and your dedication to this committee. As Jen mentioned, we are big believers in the mission of Rtd, and just thrilled to have the opportunity to work with you all at the Rtd board. I was 100% reliant on transit when I had my first job out of college in Washington, D.C., and came to appreciate the system more than I had ever known. And like my business partner, I have been blessed to travel around the world and always appreciate the transit options to go and visit museums or parks or historical monuments, whatever it may be, and just really grateful for that. But here in Denver, I don't think there's anything better than enjoying on a Sunday evening after a Bronco win on light rail and driving every single person on the train. So
What's a Bronco win? Yeah.
Russell will take it.
A long time ago, you're wrong.
We mean the Vegas. Qualifiers.
Why don't we go to the phone? And I can't tell who's there, of course, so.
I'll go. Hello. I'm Jessica Branagh, and I apologize if I'm stuffy. I'm actually homesick today, so I'm a little out of it. But I started using public transportation in middle school, junior high back then. Rode it to school and then rode it all during college down to Metro. I right now work primarily have worked primarily with seniors and adults with disabilities, advocating and most recently helping them get employment, which means they need transportation. And oftentimes that means, working all throughout the Rtd system to look at options for them. So I've done a lot of mapping and using apps and trying to figure out where they can work so that they can actually get a bus there, where Accessorize will pick up. So I'm really glad to be here. I hope to join you guys in person next time.
You might rethink that, given our technology issues.
Could you hear any of that?
Yeah, we heard all of it. We just can't see anything. So we can hear fine, we just can't see the screen.
Oh, there they are.
We see it every once in a while. It's fleeting. Tony Jackson, I think you're next up.
Hello, I'm Tony Jackson, going on about 2 years on the committee. I'm the sales director at a small company in Boulder called Transit Marketing Group. So we do business with the larger metro transit agencies all over the US and Canada. I've been doing that for about 13 years, and I live in Denver in District C. Oh, and I ride a lot of RTD, Flatiron Flyer commuting to work, and the A line to the airport, which a lot of people said they mentioned New Jersey. I'm in New Jersey. I was working with New Jersey Transit all day today.
Thanks. Doug Tisdale. You're on mute, Doug.
There we are. Now, can you hear me now? You can, thank you. Okay. This is Doug Tisdale. I am the Rtd Director for District H, which is Cherry Hills Village, Greenwood Village, Centennial, Littleton, Columbine Valley.
But you beat me too. I've done that for years and years.
I don't know if you, can you hear me in the room? Can anybody in the room acknowledge me?
Can't hear you, Doug.
It's not muted on the phone. I mean, on the computer, and I think people on the Zoom can hear me. Can you hear me in the room?
Can you mute the computer there at peak?
Okay, so it's breaking up. All right, I'll try again. Doug Tisdale, Rtd Director, District H, and which is Cherry Hills Village, Greenwood Village, Centennial, Littleton, Columbine Valley, and Highlands Ranch. And my favorite story is that I learned to ride on what our general manager CEO calls the original RTD. Back in 1963, I used to take the 75 from Loyola High School to downtown LA, and then got on either a 55 or a 58 to get home to Downey, which often was very late at night. So I may be one of the longest tenured riders of an RTD bus in the whole call. Thank you.
Danny, can you hear us?
Did you say me?
Yes.
Danny? Okay. And then if you all can mute yourself. Great. Okay. I'm good? Okay. I'm Danny Fisher. I have been on this group for 2 years now. I live in Denver Tech Center, so I represent District E, Southeast Denver. I have ridden public transportation around the country. My first experience with it was when I moved from Oklahoma to New York City, sight unseen. And so my story is that the day I moved to New York City, I had no idea how to get around. I called a friend who used to live there and said, "How do I find the subway?" And she told me to look for the green globes with the stairs that go underground. That's how I knew. And then I lived there for several years. And then I lived in Washington, DC and rode public transportation there every day. And now I'm out here. And I've ridden it some in Europe. And I'll say RTD for me has not been a great experience out here, but I'm here because I want to make it a better experience. And I'm a rider, and I haven't worked on transportation issues in the past, but I'm just a rider. and I want to help make it a better experience. So that's what I'm here for.
Michelle, can you hear us? Okay, you're up for introductions.
Okay, great. Yeah, I appreciate everyone's patience with the hybrid. It's quite difficult. I think hybrid's like the most difficult of the past 2.5 years. So I appreciate everyone's effort. I'm Michelle Gang. I'm a new member to the committee. If you all just want to mute me, I'm sorry. Consulting. Good. Thank you so much. My story, why I'm here is very similar to Danny's. I also lived in DC for 5 years before moving out to Denver in 2019. And I've taken public transit in a lot of cities around the country and around the world. And I just relied on it every day in DC, and I rely on it every day here. I also think there's a lot of improvements and changes to be made, and it's definitely hard to take here and hard to get people to take here, but I firmly believe in being a part of the conversation and a part of the effort to make that better and to make improvements. I don't have a particular transit story. I don't have a car here in Denver. Everyone, when I moved here, asked, like, how long do you think it'll take for you to even get one? And going on 3 years now. And don't plan to get one anytime soon. So yeah, that's just sort of my story here in Denver as to why it means so much to me. But I also know that it's so much more important to the larger whole of Denver and Colorado in terms of climate change and equity. And so I'm here for personal reasons as well as just wanting to be a part of the change here in Colorado. I'm excited to be here.
Don't take
Can anybody in the meeting room hear us? Hello?
Now we can, yes.
No, we can't. They're still muted.
Yeah, they're muted.
Yes, we can hear each other, but I don't think they can hear us, and we certainly cannot hear them.
Right.
Can you guys hear now?
Yes.
We can. We just missed quite a bit though.
I think that when you were saying to unmute, that it's going through my computer, so if there's a little bit of feedback, I guess that's the price we have to pay, because otherwise you're not hearing it all.
We good?
I think so. Good enough.
Let's start with introductions.
Good enough.
So thanks. What I was saying was I want to thank all the people on the CAC, all the members, for the service that you guys provide. And you know, if you look at the resumes and listen to the experiences of the people on this committee, it's pretty incredible. And you're a tremendous resource that we need to tap into and do a better job, honestly, of tapping into you all as our resource. So that's the plan moving forward, at least from my perspective. I'm sure other directors here probably agree that we need to use you guys more and in a better fashion to help us, because like I said, you're a great resource, a lot of experience, and we can always use the helps.
All right, thanks. And thanks to all of the RTD board members who are joining us today. We really do appreciate you taking the time to come and get to know the committee a little bit, and gives us a chance to get to know you as well. All right, we're probably running a little bit late, but the next thing, or the first kind of real thing on our agenda is RTD 101, and Brandon's going to lead us in. And I'll just say, as by way of introduction, this is not meant to be the only bit of information or intro to RTD that people are going to get, especially the newer members. This is meant to be just a quick intro to RTD, some of the basics. We absolutely are going to have RTD staff come back and go more in depth on a number of issues, basically whatever the committee would like more information about. And we'll talk about that again, probably next month or the month after, and get the right people back, the experts, on a number of issues. In my tenure on the committee, I've only been here a couple of years, we've had somebody from finance, we've had somebody from operations. We've been able to do a little bit deeper dive on some issues, which is really, really helpful. So we will do those again, but we thought right now with a lot of new members, we at least do a kind of basic intro. So Brandon, take it away.
And you can look at my little screen. I'm going to do this so that, not that you're really gonna be able to see. We'll be able to send these out later. So if you just want to go through the materials, Brandon, we'll just all pay attention to you instead of to the screen.
Yeah, this is gonna be a very quick overview, because we do have a presentation at 4 o'clock from our cafe ticketing folks. But the Regional Transportation District was created in 1969 by the Colorado General Assembly. It serves 8 Denver County metro areas, 8 counties within the Denver metro area, and that includes 40 cities. This total service population is 2,300 square miles, and our population service area is 3.08 million people. So we are very large geographically speaking. Our Rtd Board of Directors is made up of 15 board directors, which we are very grateful to have several of them all here today. Directors can serve 2 terms, and each term is 4 years. Funding sources. Our funding comes a majority from sales and use tax. In 2021, 64.7% of our funding came from those sales tax dollars. The federal formula grants and the one-time COVID relief grant was 25.6% of our funding. And then passenger fares were 6.7, and then there were some other funding sources that are just 3%. RTD bus service has over 1,025 buses and serves 141 routes with almost 9,800 bus stops throughout the district. It's a lot of bus stops. We have 86 local routes, 13 limited routes, 23 regional routes, 3 sky routes that go to the airport, and then 5 miscellaneous routes, think Metro Ride, Flex, or Metro Ride, Mall Ride. Flex Ride is our on-demand bus service that serves 20 sub areas within the district. And then Accessoride has 325 vehicles that provide bus service for individuals who cannot access fixed route service and have a mobility or other disability that limits their ability to use regular bus service or transit. Our RTD rail service, we have 4 lines on 61.35 miles of track for our commuter rail, and they have 22 stations. Our light rail has 8 lines and 60.1 miles of track and 57 stations. The difference between commuter rail is the type of vehicle. It is a larger vehicle and has level boarding, so you don't step up into the vehicle to get on. And light rail does have to step up and services more stations. We have 3 different fare zones. There's the local fare zone, a regional fare zone, and then the airport fare zone. And this is a great plug that we are doing our fare study and equity analysis, and we are looking at our fare structure. And you can go to our website, rtd-denver.com/fare study, to learn what some of the alternative options that have been proposed and provide feedback on those alternatives. We have a few fare payment options. We have a 3-hour cash pass, which is good for unlimited trips at the same level of service. So if you're in that local area or regional on any bus or train. The day pass allows you to take unlimited rides on buses or trains for the price of a round trip ticket. We have our mobile ticketing app, where a lot of passes such as the daily pass and 3-hour pass are available. And we also have ticket books and other passes such as the Eco Pass that is for employers that the city and county of Denver uses, for example. I'm going to skip that slide. Our mobile ticketing, again, is available on iOS and Android devices. We have multiple fare products available for purchase on the app. You can purchase prior to boarding and pre-purchase tickets for future use. They expire 45 days after purchase, but you can store those essentially up for those 45 days. And users activate their ticket prior to boarding the bus or the train when they are using the mobile ticketing version, as opposed to a paper. We do have several different discount fares. The Live discount provides a 40% discount on a 3-hour pass and day pass for individuals who are at or below 185% of the federal poverty line. There's a special process that you go through to apply for that. The senior discount offers 50% off fares for people ages 65 and up, and that does exclude Accessoride. Individuals with disabilities also are eligible for 50% off fares. And our youth discount provides 70% discount on fares for youth who are age 6 to 19. We have a lot of transit trip resources provided by RTD. The first is our trip planner. You can map the perfect route on our website. It's a really great way to plug in your destination and your starting point, and it'll tell you what routes are the most effective based on walking or biking or driving to a station. Next Ride is our app that tells you in real time when your bus is coming. It's really fun to watch the little buses pop up and move along the map. Service alerts are available for anybody who signs up. You can receive a text message or an email alert to be notified when your bus or train schedule is changed. So if you're a commuter and you take a route frequently, it's a good idea to sign up for those. If there is a schedule change, you are aware of it. And then the last app I want to talk about briefly is our Transit Watch app. It allows you to discreetly report unsafe conditions or unwanted behaviors on our buses and trains, and is available on both Apple and Android devices. Current challenges, we do have a people power problem that is limiting our ability to increase capacity and restore cuts to service. But we did sign a collective bargaining agreement in 2022 that increases wages and benefits. And we have an aggressive recruitment and marketing campaign underway to attract top talent. We do have funding to perform maintenance backlogs and expand funding to perform maintenance backlogs and expand services is unavailable. So we are prioritizing transit dependent communities and higher performing routes until funding becomes available. And then there are concerns about drug use and crime that is deterring riders. And so we did restructure our transit police force to a impact team based or sector based structure, where we have a rail impact team that is out roving the rail, a bus impact team, which is on our buses, a community engagement team, as well as a housing and mental health team. And we are implementing security enhancements at Denver Union Station as well. And then a brief primer on the history of the CAC. It was originally created in 2005 as the Fast Track Citizens Advisory Committee. It was intended to advise the Rtd Board of Directors on implementation of the Fast Tracks voter approved initiative in 2004. It was originally comprised of 11 committee members, and that increased to 17 in 2008. And in 2016, it transitioned away from a fast tracks focus towards representing the citizen perspective, gathering information from community members to share with RTD, sharing information with community members to promote public awareness, and providing region-oriented advice regarding the implementation of RTD's strategic plan. And that is the very, very fast version. And I believe Tanya Anderson should be on the.
Brandon?
Yeah.
Before we get started, I just wanted to tell you that from the group on the phone, Danny Fisher just commented that he's seeing a lot of drug use on the trains and buses all the time now. So
Okay.
just agree with you.
Okay.
From the chat.
That's excellent. Thank you, Danny. I will relay that to transit police.
So Tanya's on the line, ready to project.
Is Tanya on? Tanya, are you on? I can't see you, but.
So in the interest of time, since we're running pretty far behind, I can do, while we're waiting for Tanya, I can give a 2-minute update on our level feedback. As I mentioned, as part of the introductions, I've reached out to all of you, have not connected yet with each of you, but that's clearly our goal as a consult team, is to do those one-on-one intro meetings. And for those of you we've had the privilege of chatting with already, really the goal of the meeting is just to get to know you and to understand if you've got history on the CAC, what's worked, what hasn't, what would you like to see different going forward. And for those of you who are new, really just making sure you understand what the general vision is going forward. I think, as the chairman said, we'll be looking at some deeper dives on some issues in the next couple of meetings. We're talking about doing a strategic planning session with a group, maybe the next meeting, yet to be determined. But some of the primary feedback that I got from each of the conversations was, no surprise to anybody here, really, what is our mission? We'd like some clarity around that. To a person that I spoke to, we really want to feel like we're providing help and being impactful. Each of you took the time out of your lives to, apply for these positions, and you're clearly civic minded and you'd like for your work to have impact. So you want to make sure that that's done in the right way. Did hear a couple of points of feedback on the course onboarding. So we'll do a little bit more of an intentional onboarding process with each of you. So this is, as I said, not the only presentation. We're going to be a little bit a little bit more detailed and again, just really identifying that role and that impact. And then at the end of each meeting, what we heard is, if we want to report back, Mr. Chairman, to you and the rest of the board at your meetings, what is it that we're reporting back to? So with each presentation, okay, is there an opportunity for we as CAC members to provide input on this presentation? If so, what is it? So that if it's Matt or John, they're rotating their chair roles and they're report back to the board, what is it that we're reporting back to the board? So we'll get a little bit more organized as we go forward, and I promise you, we won't have tech issues next time. You might be in the room downstairs, wired differently. We won't be relying on an owl. So bear with us on that. Apologies for the tension. But that's my quick update.
Tanya, I think are you on? If you are, I think you're up on presentation.
Hello, everyone. Am I displaying my own version of the PowerPoint, or I wasn't sure?
Tanya, you broke out a little bit.
Am I sharing the presentation? There's a lot of background noise.
We're sharing it on the Zoom call. We're not sharing it in the room because we don't have a screen.
Show.
Yeah.
Oh. You do the same thing.
Yeah. I just can't see the chat.
Yeah. Why not?
It's up on.
Yeah, it's on the screen. I am sharing it on
Brandon.
Okay.
So it's the Zero Fare for Better Air presentation that's up?
Yep.
I'm giving the other one.
We're having too many. I don't hear five.
Yeah, do we want to?
Tanya was doing Zero Fare for Better Air, right?
No, I'm not.
Oh, all right. I'm sharing the presentation.
Tanya is with our.
Sorry. Okay, now you should be seeing what you're looking at, Tanya, so go ahead.
All right, fantastic. You want to go to presentation mode?
Please put it in presentation mode.
Yes. I do that a lot.
Okay. The problem is if I do that, then I can't see anything else.
So you're gonna
I'm showing it.
Okay. Now I can do that.
We can skip the presentations and just do kind of housekeeping and then come back to the.
No, that's not it. Try again. We're seeing 2 slides at once.
Yeah, maybe why don't we skip, apologies to the RTD staff that set time aside for this, but why don't we skip these presentations? I'm sure you guys won't be crestfallen. Given the challenges, the tech challenges, let's skip those for this meeting and bring them back at a future date and maybe just spend a little bit of time talking about, Mr. Chairman, since you've got to leave a little bit early too, about some of the kind of administrative and going forward.
Is there anything, even if we're not going to share the presentation, is there anything that either of these presentations wanted CAC feedback on that we could just talk about without using the presentation before we before we completely skip them and move them to another?
I'd say, like,
the Zero Fair is happening next month, like a week and a half from now, so if there's a way that we can get an update on how we can promote that, I think that would be important.
Yeah, and I can provide that.
Okay, and we've got all these presentations we'll email to you, so you've got those, but some of you have seen that social media toolkit presentation for Zero Fair, but the rest of the group can benefit.
So there's a kickoff next week for Zero Fair, next Thursday at 10:30, Union Station at the train platform. So press conference, lots of important people will be there. The mayor, I don't think the governor was invited, but I don't think he can make it. So that's going to be our big kickoff event. As someone just said on the RTD website, the media kits are available. All the data and information there is available. Brandon, I don't know if you have more info on those types of things, but
Yeah, so we're doing the media kickoff on next. Yep, on the 28th, it's gonna be at Union Station, and everyone is invited to come. It's going to be at the media kickoff is, I believe, at 10:30.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, we are having an outreach event where we're tabling with Rtd Transit Police. Recruitment will be there as well, and then Rtd staff will also be available to talk about the fair study, and customer care will be there. So we'll have all sorts of resources for people to learn more about the Zero Fair and what Rtd is doing to ensure that the system is safe during the month of August and beyond, and really, again, promoting our recruitment efforts as well. So you are all welcome to attend that. The outreach is going to be from 11 to 1 at that same location on the train platform at Union Station.
So the other piece I would add to this is there's a social media toolkit. So to the extent each of you are on social media, we would encourage you to share. There's some, yeah, there you go.
Get loaded.
At any rate, you'll see the presentation that we'll email out to you. You'll see the social media toolkit if you're willing to share.
Is there copy that's written? I think see that with like other images, but not social media copy.
There's some, there are some flyers, there's some content as well.
Is that in the toolkit or can we get that?
It's in the presentation, so we can just email out the presentation, and there may be more than that too, but the presentation does, if you can see it, have some tools that might be helpful.
And if I may ask a question, just on the Zero Fair, we've had discussion at CAC about that with staff previously, without revisiting that more detailed discussion, since we have Director K, Chair Luzak, what would you say, and staff, and what would you say is the need or the benefit of that effort launching in August for the agency and the district and the region?
sure. So the funding that we're sharing for this program comes from a Senate bill that is designed to help reduce ground level ozone and thereby greenhouse gases. So that's the big picture. And August is probably one of the highest ozone producing months in the Denver metro area. So we're going to be looking at that and hopefully some measurement tools to measure whether we've had an impact on that. And people have ridden transit more than they typically do. And the way we'll be doing that is every conveyance of ours, whether it's a bus or a train, has what we call an APC, an automatic passenger counter on board. And so we've got baseline numbers, obviously, of passenger ridership. And during the month of August, we'll be able to determine how much more people have ridden transit. So that's the big, so it's really twofold. The greenhouse gas reduction, big thing, but for RTD also is hoping to get people attracted back to transit, to riding transit. If it's free, hopefully we'll get some more people saying, well, let's give it a try. And then down the road, our fare study and equity analysis, hopefully will come around to simplifying and addressing the fare issue in a bigger sense. So we'd love to have people back on transit and using transit, whether it's to get to and from work or school or whatever, or even just choice use, you know, get on to go to a Rockies game or to come downtown to, you know, walk around and watch the construction on the 16th Street Mall, whatever. So twofold, you know, greenhouse gas, get people back on transit. That's our goal. And we don't make, I'm sorry, go ahead, Jim.
No, I was just gonna say that the latter of the two, especially with our suburban district, with District G, I look at it as a viewpoint of try a ride, you know, because it's significant for somebody who's actually never been on our system to have these free months or free days, for lack of a better term, to actually experience the public transit system. Because, you know, vast majority of the people who are funding the system have actually not been riders. And I think that's kind of, you know, my big motivation with it is coming from a suburban district. How can we get people just to try? Take your family on, you know, for a Rockies game, just to try it out. I think that's going to be big because looking at the long term, if you really want to fight, you know, greenhouse gas emissions, it's get more people out of the cars into public transit. And if we can get more people to try, I think that's what's going to be significant about it.
I think I'll just say too that August is an exciting month because all schools and universities go back and learn around by the 20th. So the numbers are going to be shooting up. It'll be a little challenging, but you know, we're still driving nuts. But hard enough.
Then since you mentioned the FAIR study, is there any work to try to change the time frame on collecting public feedback so that you can capture a lot of feedback from very new riders when fairs return in September? I mean, I know you can't always like pull timelines, but I didn't think about that too.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea, and I'll make sure that the consultants we have get that information, because that's a great data point.
What is the timeline for the FAIR study?
I had it on a slide that I presented to the North Glen Thornton Rotary yesterday, but on the top of my head.
You know,
Early 2023 is when we want to have things done, but there are a number of steps in between, and the most pressing one now is public comment.
I'm like that. I just had the conversations. You know, I think though that you know, there will be. They've done one, but they'll be going out for a little. Yeah, and there will be electives at a lot of polling. Salt Lake, with their transit system, did a pre-fair February this year. They just had really good results. The numbers, the ridership went way up. I don't know how well it stayed, you know. That's a good question. And their safety phone calls and calls to the police and all went down. So, you know, I think the hope is lessons that those behaviors.
Based on that study with the ETA, what they did, I think the more you have a filled up vehicle, you know, sometimes that unwanted behavior is present because it's so filled, you know, compared to unwanted behavior hopping onto an empty train. I think that's what it says.
I'm sorry, I can't. So related, it's been a tough 2.5 years for RTD. But that's not a problem unique to Rtd. That's been a national challenge for all transit agencies and providers. There's been no shortage of negative press coverage and publicity. Does this perhaps offer the agency and its partners an opportunity to begin to tell a different story about the agency and change the narrative and get some positive coverage?
Yeah, fingers crossed. Yeah,
Is that
absolutely. That's definitely a goal. We don't want the opposite to happen, and that could just as easily happen if we're not ready and we fall on our face. But we've really been working hard, and with regard to security issues, we've been coordinating and partnering with local jurisdictions to ensure that they're going to be willing to step up and help with, you know, the policing and all those efforts as well. So that's all in the works, and hopefully is going to result in the positive outcome, because if we can have a positive story to tell at the end of August, I mean, that's a good thing, and RTD could really use positive press, you know, we've, not had a lot of that in the past, but we're making some strides and some changes, and with, you know, Deborah Johnson. Seen a new perspective.
So I kind of curious, how are you really gonna get the word out? I mean, I'm old fashioned, I read a newspaper, a virtual newspaper, I'm not all that old fashioned. But, you know, these days, how you really get to people is a little unclear. I mean, I just almost wonder when you should slap a sign on every bus stop and every train station.
I was right, Elon, we already have advertisements on.
Well, certainly not at a bus stop. Yeah. At least not that I've seen. But, you know, something that is literally in people's faces where as they are walking around, you know, they will see it whether they want to or not. I mean, it's hard. It used to be sure you put an ad in the newspaper, and I'm not saying you should do that. A lot of people still do look at those from time to time. But, you know, for the general public, which is out there, it's really hard to get their attention. And I agree with John. This is, I mean, not only do you want to tell them about the free fares, it's also a great time to tell them a little bit more about RTD. Well, you've got them for 20 seconds. And, you know, take advantage of it if you can.
Are you guys doing any TV?
That's what I'm checking.
There's a number of news stories in the paper, broadcast,
Yeah,
I'm sure
so.
KOA will do something, I've seen on Channel 9 have the stories.
Yeah, we're doing news releases, media interactions. We're sharing our information with public information officers and our TMO, TMA partners. We're doing paid print, digital, broadcast, social media, radio, and billboards as well.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the ways that this committee has functioned in the past is not just like to provide feedback to RTD, but it's also been to provide feedback to the networks that we might have access to.
Absolutely.
So I think that's my plan, is when social media information comes out, to use my networks to spread the message as much as possible. So I think that's a small way that we can actually help with this here in the room and on the phone.
That's awesome. It's great.
Thank you.
I've encouraged our local electeds to ride the bus, tweet, and post it, and let people know their networks.
Well, it would certainly be nice, and if somebody gets at someone with people with the local ethics would announce this at their council meetings and other meetings, they were always out and about. Certainly was doing that. And, you know, you just get a different group of people to this meeting or that meeting or that meeting or who knows what. Hopefully, you know, Rocky's team mentioned, the great announcements during the baseball games that, you know, you're coming down to the game, you come down for free. Whatever it is, that this is not my specialty. I'm not really, frankly, at figuring out how to get at people anymore, but it's kind of everything you can think of, I think, at this point. So the other comment, question I have is, and you know, you kind of mentioned that you said there's some looking at baseline data. This is going to be tough. I don't know that there is any good baseline data anymore to compare anything to after 2.5 years of COVID, and in a world where now so many people work at least partly from home. So I must say, I scratch my, and I'm a data wonk, and I kind of scratch my head over, so what the heck do you compare it to at this point? The last 2 years have been nuts. You go back before that, pre-COVID, well, that's kind of unfair because people were actually like going into work then, which they're not so much anymore. So how do you really figure out, and I just wonder, if, frankly, you don't need to kind of almost do a bus stop, train stop survey of people and figure out, hey, is this the first time you're using RTD? Were you attracted because of the free fares? Are you thinking of using it again? It's just the kind of aggregate numbers. I'm not sure what they're going to tell you, and I'm frankly a little afraid they may not look so good. But again, if you compare this to 2018, well, that's kind of unfair. People were not working from home in 2018. They were all going into work 5 days a week. So that has nothing to do with RTD, that's just the world has changed. So anyway, I'm just thinking out loud, but I want to make sure RTD does not kind of use data that is misleading in one direction or the other. Through no fault of your own, just this very weird world that we find ourselves in.
I think that's, I'm sorry, I think that's a real legitimate concern. I have that concern about the SLP, we do this whole thing, saying we're gonna increase ridership, and I didn't measure that if ridership is already coming back. But on this case, I know, and I haven't seen, I'd like to see the polling with here, I don't know if you've seen it, but they did look at what they did in Salt Lake, and are refining that, and we're asking a lot of those, this is the first time we've been transit and those questions.
Yeah, so there will be polling that happens. And also in terms of getting the word out to the local communities. The MMC, the Metro Mayors, is it caucus or coalition? Caucus. Metro Mayors Caucus created a subset group for transportation and transit issues. And we've met, Deborah and I have met with them a couple different times about getting the word out on the zero fare program. So they are all on board and eager to assist us and get the word out in their community. So hopefully we're going to get some good impact.
Well, that's the right group.
Yeah, people, as I am on social media, Cinnamon likes to make fun of my cyber stalking skills, but people are sharing this book, and I've seen a lot of chatter on social media about it, so. I think your point is spot on, that's exactly in my mind, that value add to this group is that bi-directional conversation. So again, as I mentioned earlier, to the extent you're all comfortable sharing on social media, and if you're not that, let's create a Twitter account.
I mean, even if it can go dark quickly, but next door, for people who live in like a neighborhood type of setting, let's to get the information out there anyway. That's like a very simple way to talk to neighbors. You can talk to your neighbors.
Yeah.
That's a novel.
Actually, next story is a good idea. It's good to raise that. I do look at from time to time at the roaming ads. But you know, in Boulder, at least, I don't know if it's elsewhere. In Boulder, the city, one of the city's communications people will post things from time to time, and it gets on all of the next door, you know, groups for the city of Boulder. And you should really get that to post this once in a while. I mean, they can post it.
Oh, they will.
Well, I'll take a look, but they haven't yet, but hopefully they will, because that gets up to a lot of people. A lot of people, and well, a lot of the stuff in next door is eye rolling. There is some information now and again, and that's a good place to put it.
I personally got on a lot with the end line launching because of a lot of misinformation. So I just kind of gave people guys, and it didn't go far, but just it's one more person. So I think there's a lot of ways to get this message out here in the world.
Well, that's why the city and county communications people are, because they can get it to everybody. You can't personally, but they can. And that would
People
be.
pay attention to the city communication.
Well, yeah, maybe, but at least it's, one more way to get it in front of people's faces. I'm sure a lot of people still don't know about it, which is okay. We kind of want to make sure they know about it soon now. Anybody else? Anybody on the phone? I can't really see you, so I don't.
The partner toolkit is available on Rtd site. It's rtddenver.com/zero-fare. So you can download the toolkit. That's all of that information. There's logos, design template, icons and imagery, fact sheet, key messaging, newspaper copy, broadcast script. So all of those tools, if you want to use them, are available right now online.
Is the picture of Matt Applebaum on the side of the Rtd bus in that?
I don't see it, but that doesn't mean it's.
Great. Okay.
Like for the Zoomers, are you like pretty close to serving people? Or that I used to do. So like what machinery are you using?
I can find out from our statistician. Yeah, I can find out and send it out to the group. Yeah.
Cause it's like, you can also do like, 'cause it sounds like you just do like a standard P test, like for example, P test, and if you wanted to grade against. Grades, you kind of go against a little regression or something. Yeah, maybe I'd like to know ways to look against. Like psychometric books.
I have those psychometrics books at home too. They're holding up labs next to my bed.
Yeah, you can, I mean, look, you can do you can do statistical analysis. The problem is still, what do you compare it to? To me, that's the hard part. Because the world has changed so much. That's the tricky part, is that what is your I gotta scratch my head over all this. You know, certainly comparison about basketball. So, you know, but compare it to July. Let's see.
Yeah, I think that's excellent. It's not ideal, like I said, maybe.
I mean, in both, you know, relationship to triples, quadruples, those are tenfold student show us. You know, we got that. But and when the schools start, some of the kids take the college kids as impact lessons. So yeah, you gotta kind of stir that all together and figure out how to make the analysis work.
Yeah, there were a couple of communication goals associated with account-based ticketing too. I don't know if we want to just, go over those really quickly before, I think we do have a little bit more time on that one, so we probably could push that presentation out to next meeting.
Yeah,
There were-
Tanya said she would be happy to come back next
Okay.
month.
All right, sounds good.
Send her our.
Oh, yes. And I would just say with the zero fare, when you're out talking to people and you hear someone say, oh, my bus never showed up, or something like that, when people are being critical, try to give them a solution. So if someone says my bus never showed up, encourage them to sign up for service alerts. And that will be one step that can help them avoid another missed trip. Because they'll be aware if there is a service change, or if someone says someone was doing something they didn't like on the train, well, refer them to the Transit Watch app, because then we can collect that data. And if there's an emergency, then transit police can get en route. As Director Bouquet said, these are sometimes people's first time on transit. And so if they have a bad experience, they're probably not going to come back. So we want to give them the tools to have a positive experience on the front end. And the resources that will help them sustain travel. Oh, I can go to service alerts to make sure that my bus is going to be there before I go to the station. Or, ooh, I don't really like what that person is doing, I'm gonna report it, but I'm feeling good knowing that I'm doing that. So please, if you hear noise and chatter, give solutions instead of saying, oh, that sucks. Because we really want to encourage people to continue taking transit. If they have a bad experience, it's not a good thing.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
I get transit alerts, I do all that. I had an experience the other day where I took the bus from the 120th and I-25 parking ride, which is the start of that route, and it never came. But I don't know how, I never got an alert that it was just not coming. I know like when it's the FF1, when it's going down Highway 36, that it's been canceled, right? Because I can see it. But how do you find out when it's the beginning of the route? That was where I just stood there for another half hour. It's like, well, this is what the mayor gets for making me go to the office.
They should be pushing out service alerts anytime that there's a cancellation. So it could be that one might have.
Got it, okay.
Might have been missed.
That was
or-
the only thing I don't know.
Yeah, and are you signed up for the service alerts for the 120? Okay.
Yep.
I think next drive, actually the same, if a bus is like not currently in service, it's just starting its day, won't show up at all, and so you just don't, the GPS doesn't know that it's late, it just thinks it's like a tech issue almost is a good way to put it. So it shows you like that there should still be a bus without the light tracking on it. And it takes it a really long time to realize it's not a tech issue, that it's actually just not a service.
I will reach out to customer care.
Oh, it's not a problem. I'm
Yeah,
just
no,
curious.
but that's good to know if there are issues with the service alerts.
It's that, yeah, it's just no bus at all.
I was gonna say, I actually love what Brandon said, but I think one of the challenges is that a lot of the apps that RTD has, most riders don't seem to know. So like, when I've shown people Nextdrive, they're like, like, how did you track the bus location?
Right.
I feel like a lot of, when you're at a bus stop, when you're waiting for a bus, there's nothing there that tells you, hey, get on your phone and check Nextdrive, or you can buy a ticket on RTD mobile app so you can get it before you get on the bus and stuff like that. I think there's some opportunity for, at bus stops and the train stations and stuff to better communicate like the self-serve options that exist rather than someone just feeling like they're a lot along the sidewalk. Because once you learn it, it's amazing.
They can check it every day.
Yeah.
You know where to go.
Hey, Matt, can I ask one question, as it looks like we're kind of getting near the end here? Love when we have board members, the chair and the district director here, giving us your limited and spare and precious time. The board operates in a lot of different ways, but it's at least principally and largely a policy body. So since we've got you here, I'm gonna ask, just maybe, don't know that you can speak for the entirety of the board, but kind of your view, looking ahead as we come near the end of the summer season, school starts, kids are back at school, maybe things continue to improve in terms of the economy, jobs, ridership ticks up. What is the board concerned about? If you can share maybe the 2 or 3 big high-level policy issues that the board is engaged on for this year or maybe and into next year.
Well, you're looking at me, so I'll start. But I won't speak for the rest of the board. I'll just speak for me. First and foremost, safety and security issues and concerns are tantamount. And, we've gotten a lot of press about that at the review station and all that. And as you may have alluded to before, it's not just an RTD problem. It's across the country on transit and off transit. So, things that happen on transit can just as easily happen on the sidewalk or the street, and they do. So, that's one of the things we're really looking at. What the impact teams, Brandon talked about the impact teams. So we're really focused on that. A couple other things that we have coming up. We've got some Tabor issues that are going to be negatively impacting us in the next few years down the road, to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars a year impact. So we have an ad hoc committee, Tabor committee, looking at the issue that will come back to the board with recommendations, and more than likely a Tabor election to debrief for that purpose. Couple other things, I guess for me, zero emission vehicles is a big thing. So first Vice Chair Geisinger, Director Bouquet, I appointed them and 2 others to an ad hoc committee to study the implementation and integration of zero emission vehicles into our fleet. We've got 17 of those vehicles coming. They're on order, scheduled delivery, first quarter 2023, unlikely. No, supply chain and chip issues and all that stuff, but we're making that start. So for me, those are some big things, but first and foremost, and always, not just now, but always, is safety and security, making sure our customers, as the says, have a good experience. First Vice Chair Geisinger.
I agree with all of that. I'll come with a couple of different ones, which is workforce is huge. It's just, it's crippling us right now. It's not financial right now. In the long term, financial is a big issue, but right now it's just hiring people without like starting agreement and doing what we can to hire a lot of positions. So that's one of them. And then sort of, and overall, I chair the government relations committee. It's not exactly a government relations committee anymore. So, sort of just how we look at all of these issues and service, which is so huge to so many people, in a way that starts to develop our community support. And that's just an area, you know, everything from our governor and our local officials to our, not even starting there, but starting with our riders. Our riders tend to like a lot of them. It's the others who don't have the options or don't take advantage of it. So that's a piece of my thinking about this.
I'm glad you mentioned the staff, the drivers, the operators, the staff. Even if the agency wanted to increase service, if you don't have.
That's the problem, right?
And there was an article, I'm sure you've seen in the Washington Post, which was, it was a real eye. Yeah, and I don't mean it in terms of, yes, and for what that bus driver has to endure, has had to endure it. It's the fact that hopefully she's still with the agency. She seems like a good employee.
You know, as Deborah points out, she fixed that route.
She picks that route, that's her choice. She likes that route and she likes those people. And hats off to her for doing that. That's how you do that job.
It was just a real eye. I mean, I know it's probably a challenge to have that kind of rules and journalism for the agency. But again, for those of us who we know these issues are not unique to our team. This is a national challenge. And to have a dedicated staff member, I think the story there is not only what she said, more important, but that she stuck with the job, the agency, and how dedicated she seems to be. That's the impression you got.
By the way, that's a reminder to everyone as you're riding to thank your drivers. Yes, absolutely. I think they need to hear support.
I heard so many people, when they get off the bus, you know, yeah.
Director Bouquet, did you have a couple?
I was just gonna echo people power problem. That's by far, I think, the biggest thing. That's what Deborah will say is and it's twofold. Comes down to service, comes down to security. I'm not gonna speak on behalf of the board members, but I would guess 15 out of 15, in my opinion, that's gonna be one of the biggest issues, is gonna come down to service and security. Well, you need folks to be security officers, you need folks to actually get that service. You know, it's like we have the vehicles, but we need the operators and how important that is. So in my opinion, you know, getting our ducks in a row when it comes down to getting those folks to fill those positions, because we won't have those routes. We don't have those folks driving those vehicles. And then ultimately, I think going to, you know, zero emission vehicles, that's what I see as our goal in the long term. You know, this climate is very important to me, very important to our generation, to a lot of folks. One, getting people to hop on board, but also making sure that our vehicles, you know, are paving the way when it comes down to, you know, the future. And I think that's, you know, I'm excited about our committee that we'll be on, you know. I think there's a lot of opportunities, but I think that's the biggest thing. And then the second thing I would mention, which Director Geisens got to, was communications. So we need to be able to tell where we at when it comes down to us as an agency. We have, because a lot of narratives are getting told, not false narratives, but at the same time, we need to highlight the accomplishments that are going on at Rtd and ultimately get people to try it out, you know, because again, as mentioned, a lot of folks using the system actually really do enjoy the system. It's the community members and trying to build back that community trust and create those communication channels, which that's what I'm hoping with the CAC is you folks can bring us all what you're hearing and we can kind of bring it back. It's going both ways. So
I need to leave in about 2 minutes, but I just have one question for all of you, and maybe Doug's still on the phone, I don't know. I mean, Paul mentioned really important issues, no question. And Rtd, like all the transit agencies out there, are struggling to deal with exactly those issues. I got it. But what I wonder is, do you still have the bandwidth, I guess, or do you think you have the knowledge in a world that's changing quickly to really look at the longer term reimagine type issues where Rtd might get restructured in some way, which personally I think it does need to rethink kind of how it provides service to its huge area. And I'm just wondering, is that, I mean, I know that's ongoing, but with all these other kind of shorter and maybe midterm issues you've got, you really gonna continue to take that on and be willing to say, yeah, we're gonna make some changes long term, or not?
Well, sure, and part of our, you know, the reimagine process, we're getting through the first phase of that, which is, you know, our system optimization plan, but the second half of that is the mobility plan for the future, but it's very easy to get caught looking at your feet as you're walking and not looking down the road, you know, like an IndyCar driver is looking, you know, 300 yards down the road because he's covering that in 1 second. So we've got to keep looking down the road and making sure we're not just caught up in, oh my God, we're going to buy Union Station today. Right, we've got to keep up. So I think we do. I think the short answer, yeah, I think we do. And I know we've got a lot of great board members, just like you, the CAC's got a lot of great members. We've got some pretty sharp board members and some good background and experience and knowledge base.
Someday.
One thing I want to, before we break up, I'm giving a presentation a week from Monday in Salt Lake City about safety and security and things like that to our national industry group, the APTA, the American Public Transportation Association. And I was on a call this morning with the other two panelists that are going to be there, and some of the people from APTA, and one of the APTA reps is 40 years in law enforcement, transit law enforcement. An interesting tidbit that she said, she talked about RTD. Denver police they were the first police department in the country to deploy mental health clinicians with their police department. RTD was the first transit agency in the country to deploy mental health clinicians with its transit police and transit security. I didn't know we were the first. I knew we were up there, but yeah, first in the country. I didn't realize that's pretty cool. So
well, I didn't go, but the reason I asked about reimagine is this committee has been involved with that, and I think really excited about it. Not that we pretend to know the answers, nothing nearly like that. But I think really excited about looking a little further down the road and thinking about, well, so how would you maybe make some potentially fundamental changes? Yes, of course you need to deal with safety issues. Of course you need to deal with workforce. Got all of that, and you guys have been struggling with that for a while. But you know, where is the agency going with the changes we've seen in the world, and you know, frankly, the difficulty of running an agency in a district of this size? And so, personally, I hope you continue working on that. I hope we continue to be a part of it. It's a big deal. I don't expect magic answers in the next 6 months, but I think we really need to keep pushing on that, because you can't just kind of stumble into it. You really need to make some decisions about where do we want to be in 5 years and 10 years. And you know, I'll just say this: I think it's a really good RTD board right now. So I hope you really do take it on.
And I think that I would encourage you to continue that conversation. I think a lot of us would be happy to join in that part of the conversation. A lot of that's going to come down to what funding will look like. And that may be that local governments, local counties are able to raise money for transit and transportation. Our is maybe that we have to seek it from the state. You know, there are a lot of issues, but I think that's key.
John, why don't you take over? Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks. I would simply add 2 cents, I guess. Is that I think my 2 cents is I think the state's been missing lately in terms of support and partnership, and that's one of the areas. I guess I call it a challenge. And for RTD to be successful, probably needs more, in my view, more support and participation from the state on. I don't know what that level, where that happens, but the fact that it's not there, at least by my observation out District G in the southeast corner of the district, and I think I'm right about it, certainly doesn't help. I would simply say that the organization in the district is large enough that it's of statewide significance. And if it's of statewide significance, the state ought to be at the table in a positive way, and it's not.
You're here.
Yeah.
You know, most transit agencies in this country of our size receive funding from the state, and you know. Yeah. Lynn's working on that.
Yeah. Well, I think that's to me, the zero fare August was really, it's not a ton of money, but it's the state stepping in to help. And I felt like that was an important thing for us to.
Positive step.
Yeah.
We're not gonna be able to do it alone, so we're gonna need these partnerships.
We definitely need a more reliable source of revenue than sales tax, which, you know, goes with the economy up and down.
I was just gonna ask, building on John's question about what the board's concerned about from a policy level. While we still have you here and we're thinking about going into some strategic planning about what the CAC is going to be able to contribute moving forward, what kind of topics we might be able to look ahead for, what ones we might be looking at in the short term, what from your perspectives would be the most help that this group could provide in terms of input, you know, either from topics or from customer experience or something else that we haven't thought of.
Yeah, those are all good questions, and then there are a number of things, I'm sure, but it might be good to have a word study session where we talk about this specific topic, because we've never really had that happen where the board, all 15 members are required to get together in a study session and say, how can we use the CAC? Because you guys have been around for since 2004, right? I mean, so let's maybe make that happen. Because, you know, and Jennifer Webster, Simon Munson, and you guys have been fantastic reaching out to the directors to kind of get that info and get that detail. But it might be an idea for us to come together something.
That's a good idea. Do we have anybody still on?
Yes,
Is
there are.
You're still there.
We have Brian, who's new actually. Andrea Sukaka, Catherine Sanders, Devin Sanders, Eric Smith, Jessica's still on, Tony Jackson,
And Eric is a new member. He wasn't able to introduce himself earlier. Eric, if you're still on, do you want to say hi real fast? Tell us a fun transit story.
There you go. Yes, I was trying to unmute myself. Sorry. So I'm Eric Smith. I am originally. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I'm originally from Texas. My transit story is growing up in Texas and in Arkansas. Growing up in Texas and in Arkansas, transportation was very limited. So my first foray into transportation was when I got to Colorado. And even though I had a car when I got here, how I ended up with RTD was because it snowed and I never drove in the snow. And so I was forced to ride RTD bus because I couldn't drive in the snow. And so then eventually I found out that I could park at the parking rides and then take the light route. And so that's how I got into RTD.
Awesome, thank you.
Maybe we're losing our mask here anyway, but maybe before we leave, maybe one thing that you guys would like to have as a topic if we're thinking about a strategic planning, you know, what do you want each of the members that's still here want the CAC to do moving forward? I know Jen's talked to a lot of you one-on-one, but I thought it would be helpful to just go around the room and hear from everybody on what you think the best use of your time is moving forward.
Well, my perspective, the people I represent want certain routes back, and so I would love to hear, you know, updates on that and give feedback.
I think for myself, I think we should emphasize transit watch a little bit more, considering that there have been lots of issues with security and safety and drug usage. And so I think we need to make it a little bit more visible about what people who do utilize RTD can do. Putting the signs on the bus is no longer feasible. I think the public should know about what's going on and how to and what resources they can to help out or help RTD help that out.
And Eric, do you think that that's something that the CAC members can do within the networks, or is that feedback to RTD about communication that should, that should?
I think we can give feedback because of course we're within the community, but based off what I've seen and based off the people that I deal with, again, and from what I've seen and from what I deal with, I think that the only thing we can really do where RTD is falling at. And I think for me, I've seen some of the signs before about Transit Watch because I didn't know about it. And so I didn't really understand even before the meeting. And I think that it's on RTD to emphasize exactly what it is to get it out into the public as CAC.
Thank you. Let's just go around the room and we can do a lightning round. So we are 7 minutes in.
My 2 cents would be, I think the discussion about the CAC's role, how we can be helpful and effective. Kind of having that discussion and then clarifying and confirming that with RTD staff, with input from RTD staff and with input from the RTD board. Right, we're not staff, we're not kind of the general amorphous public, but we are a public body with both an interest and some areas of knowledge and expertise. So I think that discussion and clarifying and confirming the role of CAC to me is probably the most important before we even get into some of the discrete topics that RTD may want to engage with us.
Yeah, that was really my concern too, that just how to enhance our expertise, as they mentioned, to integrate, I guess, a lot of our expertise into some of the staff, RTD's work. And then maybe look at ways we can maybe partner with other agencies like CDI and tools and their quality goals and objectives.
I'm fully aligned with everything that's been said so far. I would say the CAC in the past, its challenges each month has had a different topic, and sometimes they are so spread out that it's hard to really build on the conversation. Knowledge might, as for everyone's new, you'll understand that over time, but yeah, it's nice once you already know a topic, just jump into it, build on it. I do think one area that doesn't get a lot of focus sometimes is the customer experience. Well, right now, security and safety is a big part of that, but I think there's a lot of other sort of details of the customer experience that get left out by RTD sometimes. So, and we can be a voice to sort of advocate for what that experience should look like, and sort of every touch point someone has with the agency.
Kind of really just piggybacking off of I'll read ask for comments here. I'm just kind of really developing on that, getting the idea of what the CAC would be, but also in my own professional background, being in communication and outreach. A lot of times when I have these different RNO meetings with residents about Denver, one of the things I hear a lot about, actually, just last night, it was actually a meeting with one of the RNOs, and one of the biggest concerns is like the lack of public transit within the residential area, so that they don't really have, you go downtown Union Station, you go to any major street downtown, there's tons of access to public transit, but once it goes into more residential, like urban regions neighborhoods, just general smaller neighborhoods, it's a little bit harder to find consistent routes. So that's kind of what my emphasis would be on.
All right, on the phone, Devin, do you have a thought?
That was me.
Oh, sorry. Jessica, you stuck with us. What do you have moving forward for the CAC?
I'm having a hard time hearing you guys, but I think what I'd like to mention is that I guess I'd like to give input and receive input on how I can communicate to the, the human services community, the disability community, and those of us providing services to them on how we can best support them with a lot of these obstacles for their transportation. So that's kind of where my focus is, and that's that's the perspective I'm hearing and looking at everything with.
Great, and then Tony, and I'm sorry, I forgot your words.
Sorry.
It was already said a bunch, but definitely the feedback from staff and board on our function. And another thing I would say, it was mentioned earlier, it'd be good to hear more about the direction and the future of RTD. Someone said something about transition to zero emissions vehicles. So as that starts to take shape, it'd be good to be in the loop on that.
I think that's everybody on some side. All right, so we will do some agenda setting for the next meeting, but I think if it's good with everybody here, we'd kind of like to set the next meeting up being more of a strategy session so that we really can address these broader issues moving forward about what CAC's role is and clarifying that so that these meetings become useful bi-directional communication so that the expertise of the CAC is conveyed to staff and the board members, and that we're hearing, that the CAC members are hearing timely information that is helpful to kind of provide some feedback to RTD. So if everyone's good with that, we'll plan on next session being really more of a brainstorming strategy session, and we may not need any kind of presentation at all. We might just do flip charts, so we don't have to worry about the things here, but we'll have to figure out something on the hybrid. I think we will continue moving forward on the hybrid. We have meeting invites out for August and September. And then as we go through the strategic planning, we can talk about whether this time of the month, this time of day works for everybody. If we want to start, if the locations are good, we can work on those, but we wanted to get August and September on the books for now. And then we'll, as we plan the calendar moving forward, we will provide, we'll modify them as necessary.
And just a quick housekeeping item, do we have anything, John, you or Matt would be reporting to the board at the meeting next week? Is there anything?
I don't think so. I actually have to chat with Matt about that. I was hoping to catch him before we left, but I have to have that conversation.
Yeah, the idea of the work session with the board, I thought was great.
Yeah, and the only other housekeeping thing that we didn't get to is we are going to, RTD is going to make available a page for the CAC. So we'll be able to house the meeting recordings and kind of a summary of the information that's been discussed, what's coming out in the upcoming meetings as we start to clarify those rules. So we'll have, and we are also looking at some potential direct community feedback through that site, so that may be something else that, if that's something that the CAC wants to do, that we can start to look at some direct feedback into that. Thank you so much for suffering through all of the technology issues. And thanks to everybody on the for sticking with us.
Good job. We'll need you.
I was like, there's just something.
Yeah, I think.
It's slightly different syntax and break.
Exactly. Yeah.
actually. I agree. Here are the stories now. See ya.
Okay. See you next month.